Hello and welcome to the Civil Rights PSA on We Video example. The year is 1965. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 had just been passed. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed the year before. Two huge victories for the civil rights movement. And for most white society who had supported this movement, their attitude is, yay, you guys won. You're done. You're equal. For African Americans, what they saw every day in their life still was not that they were equal, that there were still a lot of things that needed to be fought for, but they needed white society to continue to support them, and they started feeling like white society was basically done with the movement. So some of this frustration over all the clear racism discrimination that still existed is going to erupt into violence. Two examples, the Watts riot and the Harlem riots. One of the early examples of this anger that African Americans faced and feeling that they were abandoned by white society was the Harlem riots. It started as a peaceful protest demonstrated by CORE, Congress of Racial Equality. They were protesting police brutality when the police showed up, and it ended up turning into a very violent riot that lasted for 2 days and caused about $1 million worth of property damage. So it was a very scary time. Here's an example of the protest that started nonviolently by CORE, Stop Killer Cops. That is what they were protesting. You see the destruction that happened in Harlem and all the things that were destroyed, the violence that happened between the police and these African American protesters and eventually rioters. Another example of this anger that African Americans faced that erupted into violence happened here in Los Angeles with the Watts riots. 6 days of horror, much more than the two that were in Harlem. 34 people were killed here, 1,000 injured, 4,000 pretty much arrested, and 40 million worth of property damage. It was a very scary time to be outside in Watts. The following video will show you what it looked like in Watts during those days and all the destruction that came.
The atmosphere of apprehension still hover over the quieting Watts section of Los Angeles. Here for successive days and nights, mostly in the nights, the long hot summer had erupted into violence. Powerless against snipers, looters, and arsonists operating in the dark, police and National Guardsmen had tried mostly to confine the disorder to the 42 square miles of this area. But as the outbreaks abated here, they started up in other communities.
White society could not understand these images and videos that they were seeing on TV about the Harlem and Watts riots. Why were African Americans so angry? They had supported them during the civil rights movement. It was a mostly nonviolent protest that they saw. Why are they getting violent now? President Johnson is going to order an investigation across the country to find out, are African Americans justified in this anger that has erupted into the streets? Is there really that much discrimination? And the answer was simple, yes. Lots and lots of discrimination, too much de facto segregation still happening. And for white society to tell African Americans that the civil rights movement is over was a joke. But for President Johnson, unfortunately, a bigger problem was coming up, and that was the Vietnam War. And because he needed support for a Vietnam War, he's essentially going to ignore his own investigation results that more needed to be done, and the civil rights movement pretty much dies there.